Okay, pause what you are doing for a second. And if you're driving, keep driving. But if you are working, I want you to minimize all of those tabs you have open right now. And yeah, I mean all 15 of them. And I will wait because what I am about to share completely changed how I run my business. And it might just be the permission slip that you need. Have you ever noticed how God likes to speak to us in the most unexpected ways? Well, the other day I was reading in my Bible and I was in the book of Solomon and something really caught my eye. And it was when they were building the temple. And before any stone was laid or any precious gold was found, there was a blueprint, a sort of sacred order to things. And it got me really thinking about our businesses. We're all building something here. And so often we're stacking stone after stone and we have our offer after offer, or, we're producing content after content. And really, we're not doing it with really any sort of blueprint in mind. And I like to say that with business, there isn't any roadmap in all of this. So it can be very confusing, but I think that if we start to view our businesses a little bit differently and view it in the way that God intended for our businesses to be built, it can bring some order and sense of clarity to us as we're going through things. And I had a meeting the other day with one of my clients, and she's a new member of the Eden Empire group, and what she said to me really stood out, and I felt like I knew it was something that I had struggled with and oftentimes still do. But one of the things that she said is she was so overwhelmed and so frustrated in her day-to-day tasks that she just felt like she was drowning. And she really couldn't see a way out. She didn't have the time to do automations. She didn't have time to, or felt like she couldn't hire an assistant. And it felt like the time that it took for her to do all of those things, she could have just sent him out or hired somebody in replace of it. And she felt like she was so overwhelmed and she had no time to prioritize really anything else in her business, much less she's noticed that her time with her family was really starting to dwindle. And it was really bothering her. And I feel like it's a constant struggle that we face often as business owners, is this overwhelming feeling of getting so caught up in our day-to-day tasks that there's no structure or order to anything that we're doing. And it often ends up not allowing us to serve our clients in our best capacity because we are running from a place that is just prioritizing what is the fire that needs to be put out right now. And what ends up happening is we end up feeling like we're just working on our business, or sorry, we will feel like we're working in our business instead of on our business. Like we're not doing the things that really fully move the needle. And it can just be this constant cycle and it's endless. And it feels like there's no way out of all of it. And so I knew that it was probably something that you guys could relate to because I knew that it was something that I struggled with. And if you are nodding your head along with me in all of this right now, just know that you're not alone. And, I felt like it is so common and it's something that us as business owners don't share often enough. It's just an overwhelming feeling. But often that overwhelming feeling isn't just a feeling, right? Like I'm so big on listening to the things that you are feeling because to me, they are indications that God is trying to speak to you through that. And to me, that's a sign for you to show up and potentially build something in a different way, a way that you can invite God into this journey that you're on. And sometimes it takes us recognizing that what we're feeling isn't just overwhelm. It could be an indication of something else. And something else that stood out to me as I was kind of thinking about all of this is in the Bible, when Jesus was going to feed the 5,000, right? Like the incredible miracle he had when he spoke. What people were so focused on was the lack, right? Like they were so focused on not enough food, there was not enough time, there was not enough resources, right? Like all the disciples were freaking out, not knowing, because these people had been there for days. And, they were so focused on Jesus, but they didn't have anything and they were miles away from any other resources. But Jesus was not worried at all. He was focused on the order. He wanted to make sure that the structure and the systems were in place so that he could turn those 5 loaves into feeding more than enough for people. And it stopped me. Like, I felt like that was so important when I had that realization, because, as he was feeding the 5,000, he broke the bread and he gave it to his disciples, and they organized everything into groups of 50, I think. And in the middle of the miracle, he created the system. And I often like to look into the things that the Lord does for us as entrepreneurs to say, hey, how can we do things a little bit differently? How can we do things that really honor what God already set up as a system for us? So even in this time where, he has this huge job, he has this incredible word that he wants to share with others, but even in there, he was calm. He was, obviously he knew that he had that faith, right? He had the faith that it was going to be taken care of. And in all of that, he still had this system. And the system that he had in place wasn't just enough. It was more than enough. And it allowed him to delegate. He delegated it out to his disciples so he could do what he needed to do. And he was able to take something basically out of nothing and create it, just like we do as entrepreneurs, and help those who are in need. Those that we are able to serve, we're able to serve them in a capacity of excellence. But a lot of it has to come from having a structure or a system in place. And it's not just about the efficiency. It wasn't about just the efficiency for Jesus, right? It was making sure that every single person got fed and that no one was overlooked, no one was forgotten about. And I think that's such an important lesson for us to learn. Like, obviously there was other meaning to what Jesus was doing there with his sermon, right? But for us as entrepreneurs, I think most oftentimes we get so focused on the more. Like, we have to create more, we have to have more content, more offers, more everything. And as we're doing that, a lot of times what ends up happening is that we forget about the structure and the systems and everything that is needed for us to really show up and serve from a place of excellence, right? Like, when we are trying to go out and multiply and, go out and give people their bread, we have to make sure that we have the crowd organized before we can even do that. So when I was looking at my own business, I had this total light bulb moment in all of it. And I felt really overwhelmed with all of the business moving parts of everything that I do in the day-to-day. My client calls, my content creation, my email sequences. And I realized that what I was doing was exactly what these disciples probably did, right? Like, they were in this state of, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And how am I going to do that? And I feel like what Jesus was doing in that moment was showing me something powerful about, this realization about Jesus and the 5,000 is this powerful example of multiplication. Like, sometimes the very thing that feels like it is slowing us down is the very thing that's actually setting us up for abundance. So that thing that we feel like, oh, I have too many offers, I have so much content to create, and I have all of these things on my plate, it's actually setting the stage for something to be bigger, right? Like, God is giving us the more. He's allowing us to multiply, but he is allowing us to be in this moment of recognition, right? Like, this place of being so overwhelmed could actually take you to a place of recognizing that you need a system set up. You need a way to show up for your clients that serves them and serves them well. And if I'm making it super practical, you could have this complicated project management tool, like color-coded, beautiful, very organized, all the works. And I had that, right? Like, I had all of these things. And the thing that ended up happening is that I didn't even look at it. And I think it was because I was focusing more on trying to create the system to manage my chaos instead of creating a system to multiply the impact. It's not necessarily about just having automation set up and emails that are, ready to go for your newsletter and all of your social media posts set out, right? All of those things are meaningless if the purpose behind it isn't to multiply your impact, to genuinely help those that you could be serving. And what's funny to me is some of the simplification and the systems that the simplifying of my systems, like trying to make everything so easy. I was focusing on that more than the people that I was meaning to serve. And I actually found myself with less time versus more because, I was too focused on how do I get the system in place, but without the end goal of being, how can I do this with the intention of serving people? And when I shifted my mindset on the focus of what really matters for my clients, what are the things that serve them best and help them in the best capacity? What are the things that they need from me? And I created a system around that. That's when I found that I had more time and not less. And so in that moment when Jesus took those loaves of bread and he multiplied it and he made it the more for the people that he needed to serve, he took that moment and looked up to heaven and said, Lord, how do I know that this is in your hands. Like, I don't know what Jesus fully said, but, is in that moment that he looked up and prayed. He knew that it wasn't about the amount that he started with, right? It was the system and the distribution plan that he had in place, right? Like he knew as long as he had faith that the Lord would provide for him, right? That he could provide for the people that he was, going to serve. And I think that that's so important when we not only have something set up in place that can help us to be ready in those times for us to create that massive impact that we're all set out to create, but we lean on the faith that the Lord has it in store for us, and he has more in store than what we could have ever imagined. Just like this, right? Like this example where Jesus didn't just provide for people, but he had more. He had a surplus than what he ever needed and more than what he ever started with. It's just a true indication of how we as entrepreneurs can really use that as inspiration for us going forward. So I just want you to take that away. And for next week, not next week, for Friday, we are going to dive a little bit deeper into how I restructured my content creation system into giving myself more time with my clients and being able to serve them and creating less stress for myself. So if there's one thing that I've learned from this entire journey, it is that when we build our businesses in God's way, he ends up multiplying everything that we have and does it in a way that is more than what we ever dreamed of when we lean on him. And so as you are going throughout the rest of this week until Friday, I am so curious to know, what do you feel like you are trying to simplify in your business? What are you trying to multiply in the impact that you are trying to create? And in what ways could we find more simplification to create more impact for what you're doing? So send me a DM, drop a comment here. I read all of your DMs and I love the feedback that you guys are giving me. It literally means the world, and I get so excited for the 10 people watching or the thousands that are to come. It just means so much to me that you guys are taking the time to really just dive deeper into how we can incorporate the Lord and glorify him in all that we're doing. So please always reach out to me. It seriously makes my day. But until next Friday, I will see you guys then.